Good afternoon. So over the last week or so, we have been talking about cells. We said that there are three tenets to the cell theory about life. And that is, number one, that all living organisms are composed of one or more cells. Two, the cell is the basic unit of life for all living things. And three, all cells arise from pre-existing living cells. So today, what we're going to do is take a step back from organelles and prokaryotes and eukaryotes, and we're going to talk about viruses. Now, what we're going to talk about today is an introduction to viruses and the virus structure. We're going to skip replication, virology, and viruses in medicine for now. So, we have all gotten viruses from bacteria. Bacteria are not viruses, but bacteria can carry viruses that harm us. We've gotten them from plants, and we've probably gotten them from animals. Viruses cause colds. They cause the flu. Influenza is the flu virus. They cause warts. They can cause diseases such as measles, mumps, rubella, chickenpox, smallpox, AIDS, and cancer. AIDS itself is not the virus. The HIV is the virus. AIDS is the disease caused by the virus. But not all viruses end up causing diseases, and not all viruses are harmful to humans. Some of them can actually be helpful. So let's think for a minute. What is a virus? A virus is genetic material, either DNA or RNA, that is protected by a protein coat called a capsid. So if we look at this general picture that we have right here of this virus, what is missing? What's missing are cells. There is absolutely no cell within that structure. So why are some viruses harmful? A virus is super tiny. A red blood cell is about 10,000 nanometers big. Bacteria are about 1,000 nanometers. And so viruses are about 100 nanometers big. So viruses are extremely tiny. And so the virus invades the cell. And the genetic material of the virus forces the cell to make copies of the viruses. So eventually, so many copies of the virus are made, the cell explodes, and all new viruses are released. So when your cells make viruses, instead of operating normally, you get sick. So some examples of some viral diseases. The disease AIDS is caused by the virus HIV, and if you look over here on the right-hand side, you kind of get an idea of what the HIV virus looks like. You have the protein coat, or the capsid. The genetic material is inside that coat, and on the outside, you have these little tiny projections right there that allow the virus to attach itself to the cell. Warts are caused by the herpes virus. The flu, or influenza, measles is caused by the morbillivirus, and cancers can be caused by viruses like hepatitis B. Now, who do viruses infect? Viruses usually infect a specific host, including bacteria. These viruses are called bacteriophages. Viruses can infect plants, and viruses can also infect animals. So let's look at what makes a virus a virus. Viruses are parasites that invade cells. Viruses have either DNA or RNA genetic material. They direct the synthesis of new virus. What this means, viruses direct the creation of new viruses. And so, once again, when so many viruses are made in the cell explodes, it releases more virus into the body, and now that newly made virus will go and infect other cells. So let's review just a tiny, tiny bit of cell biology, since viruses cannot multiply without the help of cells. So a virus enters a cell, forces the cell to make more viruses. So we know that the cell has three main zones. You have the nucleus, where the genetic material is held, the cytoplasm, where the biochemical reactions occur and where all the other cell organelles are held, and there's also a cell membrane that protects the cell and allows the cell to communicate with the outside environment. Now, there's DNA or RNA coding for genes that defines who we are. So DNA is the double-stranded molecule that encodes genetic information, like our hair color or our height, and that's found in the nucleus of the cell. RNA is single-stranded, so it can be read to make proteins. So I already kind of talked about how small is a virus, but let's take a look at this. Viruses range in size from about 20 nanometers to 250 nanometers. 1 nanometer is extremely, extremely, extremely small. Look at that. Now, if a cell was the size of this classroom, then an average virus would be the size of a softball. And we can see that animal cells are on the right-hand side of this range, and they're rather large. And so we could go then to bacteria, and then most bacteria are orders of magnitude bigger than viruses. And then we have viruses, and at the very small end, we have atoms and we have proteins. So, viruses come in many different shapes. One of them is called helical. The capsid is a rod-like structure that has the genetic material in the center of the helix. A helix is made by stacking repeating units in a spiral. To kind of picture what a helix might look like, think about the spring inside of a pen, or think about a slinky. This is an example of the tobacco mosaic virus. This is a helical structure virus with protein units wrapped around the RNA strand. This image was taken with a special type of microscope called an electron microscope that allows scientists to image material at a very, very, very small level. An adenovirus is a virus that causes diseases like pink eye or the common cold. And so once again, we see the capsid, we see the genetic material inside, and then we see these nice tiny projections right here. Let me change the color so that you can see that. Right here. And those projections allow the virus to attach itself to the membrane of a cell and force its way inside to infect it. We also have these special viruses called bacteriophages. We like to call these the Jimmy Neutron virus. If you take a look at the structure of the bacteriophage, it is pretty crazy looking. And in fact, the picture on the left here is an actual picture of what a bacteriophage looks like. But once again, you have kind of a helical capsid, you have little arms that attach to the cell, and then you have the protein coat wrapped around the genetic material. We also have something called an enveloped virus. They're viruses that have a membrane coat surrounding the protein coat or capsid. These are common in animal viruses, but not common in plants. Typically, this membrane coat is made of proteins, and it surrounds a capsid also made of proteins, which then surrounds the genetic material, whether that be DNA or RNA. Now, the concept of a virus and the fact that viruses can infect humans, plants, and animals challenges the way that we define life. Viruses don't breathe. They don't metabolize, meaning they don't digest. They don't grow bigger. They're not made of cells. They don't maintain homeostasis. But what viruses do is viruses reproduce. If you have any further questions about viruses, please see me tomorrow when I am back at school.